What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about if you're going to be picking up an ATV that is not running, what you should look for, some things that you should bring with you, just things to consider if you're going to be buying an ATV that is not currently running when you're going to look at it. So let's jump right into it.
All right, guys, so just starting with the basics. I'm going to be using my son's Predator 50 here. It's a two-stroke. I'm going to be using this as the demo machine. So, let's say you go to pick up the machine and, it doesn't run. The seller says that it doesn't start, it doesn't run, and you can't really hear the engine run, right? So there's a few things you want to check out because you can sometimes come across good deals that just need simple fixes because they don't run, but at the same time, you could run into a lot of issues. So let's start with the basics first of what to look for when you first get there.
So let's say that you get there, look at the machine, you go to turn the key on, and it doesn't start. So you hit the button and there's nothing. So more than likely it could be a dead battery. It could be something very simple, but it could be more than that. So one thing I recommend buying before you go and look at a machine is to get yourself a little jump box. I have a big plug-in battery jumper and tender machine over there, but I recommend the small ones that you can get from Walmart or Harbor Freight or wherever. They're very small, very compact. They can be kind of expensive, $80 to $100 for a decent one, but they're portable, so they're small. You can plug them in, hook the battery up, and see if you can get it cranking from that. So let's say you put the jump box on and the machine still won't start. You're getting power, you're kind of bypassing the fact that the battery is no good. You're bypassing the battery and you're jumping it, and you're still not getting a cranking situation where the machine is cranking over and trying to start. So it could be, again, something very simple. It could be something like a key switch. And it could also be something like, for example, with this bike, you have to pull the brake as a safety to get it to crank over. So you can see I can hit the button and it's never going to crank over because it has that safety. Once I pull the brake, then it wants to crank over. So that could be something as simple as like a sensor or a wiring issue. But again, if you are still not getting a cranking issue after that, then you have to move on to the next step, which I'll show you right now.
All right, so my son's machine does not have what I'm trying to show you. It's a starter solenoid, so it does have one, but the design is a little bit easier to show on this machine. So what happens is I'm actually dealing with this situation on this machine right now. You go to start it, and you can see the battery is good. The light's dimming like it's trying to start as I hit the button, but it's not cranking. So I actually have a bad starter solenoid, so you can see it right down in there. It'll usually consist of just two terminals. And basically this is just feeding power to the starter from the battery with the trigger switch, which is right there, that sends power to it, and it's failed. So what we're going to do is to see if that's the problem and not something else like a wiring issue down the line or a bad starter, is we can just simply take a pair of pliers carefully and make sure they're rubber. And you can just take it and jump those two. It's going to spark, so you have to be careful, but you'll be able to turn over the motor if that's the issue. So we can just jump it. Show you. See? So we know that more than likely that starter solenoid is bad. It's a pretty cheap and easy fix. It's kind of a pain to get to on this typical machine. But usually they're kind of back here near the battery, but with these Can-Ams, they're designed a little bit differently, so a little bit harder to get to, but that would be another issue. All right, so let's say you try to jump the starter or the solenoid rather, and still not wanting to start. A lot of machines have a kickstart backup. This machine has a kickstart backup. This machine has a kickstart backup as well. So let's say you go to kick it over. And still it will not start. So now you could also feel the compression from the machine. If it's really easy to kick over, more than likely the compression is very weak, which would mean that you have an issue inside the motor. It could need a new top end, it could need pistons, rings, a cylinder, what have you. It's probably something you want to stay away from unless you're mechanically inclined to do that. But you'd be able to feel the compression on the kickstart when you go to kick it. If it still doesn't start from there, it could be a couple things. If the compression feels good, in order for a machine to run, you need compression, fuel, air, and spark. So main thing with these machines that I typically see is the carburetor will get gummed up because the ethanol in the fuel will actually gum up the carburetors. It'll plug up the orifices within the carburetor. Hope you guys can see me. And the machine will not start. So one way to get past that
is if you pull the intake off, you can spray carburetor cleaner directly into the motor, and it will actually bypass the carburetor altogether, and then the machine should start. So let me show you what that looks like.
All right, so let's go ahead and grab our can of carburetor cleaner. I'm not actually going to spray this into the carburetor because this is actually a running machine. I'm just trying to use this as a reference, but 2-strokes I would typically recommend like a starting fluid because it has a lubrication which is needed for 2-strokes as far as the top end. But you can use this as well just to see if you can get it to fire over. So what you would do is basically just pull this boot off, or you just locate the carburetor, pull the boot off that's in front of the carburetor where the air would go in from the air box. You would just spray a little bit into the carburetor, and then you would just go ahead and try to start the machine. And then if it tries to start and then just dies, then you know it's a carburetor issue and it's just a simple carb cleaning, or just maybe putting some fresh gas in it. If it doesn't run from there, then you have to move on to the next thing, which would be testing for spark. All right, guys, so to test the spark, pretty much what I did was I already went ahead and pulled out the spark plug. You can go ahead and look at the spark plug as well, and just make sure it looks okay. If it's really black, then that usually means that it's running too rich, getting too much fuel, which probably means you have like a clogged air filter. If it's real white and like smoky looking, it's because it's too lean, not getting enough fuel, which could be a clogged carburetor or just jetted incorrectly. But the spark plug looks pretty good. 2-strokes, you kind of have to replace them a lot more because you got fuel and oil going into the combustion chamber, but this one looks okay. So I'm going to show you next how you're going to test spark to make sure you're getting adequate spark to the machine. All right, so what you do is very carefully, you don't want to touch any other part of the machine because you could get shocked, is what you do is you put the spark plug back into the spark plug boot, and then what you'll do is you'll hold the spark plug to the cylinder head or part of the motor, or anywhere where it's grounded pretty much, and then when the machine is cranking, you should be able to see some spark up top where the spark electrode is. And then if you're getting spark, then you know that you're in good shape, and it's probably just a fuel issue or something of that nature. If you don't have spark, then it's more than likely either you start kind of tracing your steps, right? So you could start with like changing the spark plug out. It could be something as simple as a bad spark plug, or it could be a bad ignition coil. I've seen those go bad. From there, it's just kind of it gets a little bit more complex. You have to have a multimeter, and you have to be able to ohm out. Testing ohms and amperages of the stator and the CDI box and things like that. It gets kind of complicated very quickly. So I normally stay away from any machines with spark issues because it could just be so many things. Like I was saying before, it could be something as simple as like this key switch not functioning correctly, or this little sensor here for the brake not getting it to turn the machine over, or a kill switch or something of that nature. And it can get complex very quickly, and I've seen people replace everything, including a brand new wiring harness, and the machine still will not start. So typically with no spark issues, I try to stay away from them unless I can get the machine for very, very cheap, to where, if I can put a little bit into it and make it run, then it's worth it in the end. All right, guys, so last but not least, and probably the most uncommon I ever see is, if you don't have the right airflow going into the carburetor, it could cause issues as well. So basically you would just find the air box, which is down here, pull the cover off, take a look at the filter, make sure the filter isn't really plugged up and nasty. That could be restricting the airflow and then making the machine not start. So that's one last thing that you could look for if you have a non-running machine.
Okay, guys, that's pretty much all I got for today's video. So if you're going to go look at a machine that isn't running, the main things I would suggest bringing with you would be a jump box, just in case the battery's dead. I'd recommend some starter fluid or some carburetor cleaner, and then I'd also recommend a good compression gauge, just so you can make sure internally the motor is healthy. But like I said, you need fuel, air, spark, and compression for a motor to run. If you don't have those things, the machine is not going to run. But I figured I'd help you guys out and give you some insight on what to look for if you're going to go look at a machine that is not running, just to protect yourself so you don't get scammed or screwed over, because it's happened to me before. So if you guys like the content, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.